Why people loathe you. I mean, some people do loathe you.
Yes, some people do.
But do you understand why? Do you think what you're doing is helpful for Western democracy?
Maybe some people do loathe me. And that's probably true. I don't care. But the fact that, as you pointed out, 250 million people follow me is that I think a lot more people actually like me than don't. And I think a lot more people hate you and the media more than you realize.
Why people loathe you.
Almost spit my coffee. I knew what was coming, and I still almost spit my coffee out. Good morning. How we doing, guys? Rise and freedom. I'm Austin Peterson. They call me AP for Liberty because that's what I love. America, baby. 3 weeks ago, this country turned 250 years old. There were fireworks all over the place, flags all over the place. The president stood up and promised America would never become a communist country. But on the same birthday inside New York City Hall, the mayor of the largest city in America marked the occasion as a dues-paying member of the Democratic Socialists of America. So this is our country at 250 years old, the one behind the postcard. The Libertarian Institute of Cato asked young Americans what they make of communism. Gen Z came back. The only generation left that likes it more than it hates it. 76 years ago, a senator from Wisconsin stood up and said, "A great nation is never destroyed from the outside. It is destroyed by the enemies within." The entire respectable world decided that he was the enemy for saying that. And then, of course, the Soviets' cables came out and named hundreds of Americans who had been working for Moscow all along. So today we're going to make the case that the press buried the messenger, Joseph McCarthy, to bury the message. But the rot does not stop at politics. While one generation learns to love the state, it's also learning to leave its own family. 1 in 3 estranged parents now say a therapist helped to talk their own child into erasing them. The same kids who will not return their mother's call spent last week filming her garage for laughs, mocking a generation that actually owns something. We'll talk about my column that came out this week in the Jefferson City News Tribune. A country that will not keep its families together is practicing for a country that will not keep anything. So, and while we're talking about all of this, Beijing is pouring $295 billion into a national AI machine. And the first state in America just banned data centers that might keep us in the race. John Miltimore from AIER will be joining us later to talk about whether the answer to Chinese central planning is American central planning. So we'll talk about that. And we have an exciting announcement this morning. At least I'm excited about it. I don't know if this is the kind of thing that gets you all hot and bothered. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. But we have now launched today the official restoration of the Barry Goldwater movement in the Republican Party. The For Liberty Network has been a passion project of mine for the last 2 years, and there has been one important thing that we have needed that maybe you didn't even know that we needed, guys, but we absolutely did, and that is a functional, centralized hub for the entire network. Well, that new hub has launched today, and you'll be able to see my WordPress dashboard there at the top. But here's the good news. What this is forlibertynetwork.com. All of our 6 live shows now will stream automatically live at our new hub. This is our new homepage, guys, for the restoration of the Barry Goldwater movement, for the libertarian nationalist movement. I want you to check out what's going on over there at forlibertynetwork.com this morning. And I'd like to ask you guys a favor. I want you guys to break it. I want you to do me a favor. I want you to head over to forlibertynetwork.com this morning and try and break the website. So I've spent the last several weeks building this out, planning it, putting it all into shape. We have got an amazing new website for you guys. Whenever a show is live on the network, you don't have to go, oh God, where do I go to find all of this? It's all right there. Every show will stream automatically live at the top of forlibertynetwork.com. It even has our chat over there. So anybody who's chatting on Rumble, your chats will automatically be mirrored over there. Now, it doesn't work in reverse. Unfortunately, Rumble won't let us send chatters from For Liberty Network over that way. But who cares? Let's have some fun. I'd like to ask you guys to head over to forlibertynetwork.com this morning and to try and break my website. You can even tip on the website. You can sign in to the website and you have your credit card information saved. Don't worry. All of our information is saved through Square, so it's highly secure. But if you go to forlibertynetwork.com and you decide you want to tip the show, for example, you can choose to save your credit card information just like you do on Rumble. And when you make tips at forlibertynetwork.com, we get to keep pretty much all of that except for the transaction fee. So yeah, check it out, forlibertynetwork.com. This is our new activist hub. And here's the thing. Not only do all of our live shows, good morning, Warlock, all of our live shows automatically will stream at the front page whenever we go live, but this will be a hub for journalism. I've written a new piece this morning about how the Goldwater revival starts. So make sure you check out that piece. I've also written a piece about the interview we did with Mary Mack, and I'll do a replay of that later today at 8:30 a.m. Central Time. So head on over to forlibertynetwork.com this morning, guys. And I want to encourage you to break the site. Find problems with it. Show me where it's working, not working. Tell me what kind of feedback. Yeah, I see people already starting to click the little emojis in there. So yeah, head on over to forlibertynetwork.com. The chat will need work. Yes, the problems that you guys find, do me a favor and write them down, guys. Just tell me and make sure you send them over to me as they come through and be as descriptive as possible. The more you guys break this, the more I'm going to be able to figure out like what's wrong with it so I can make sure that it's perfect. And guys, guess what? We've got an alternative to Discord now. A bulldozer emoji, I can absolutely do that. I can do anything now that I've figured out how to build websites with Claude custom code, baby. L ratio. I will give you a killdozer. I'm not going to give you a bulldozer. I'm going to give you a killdozer emoji, a custom emoji just for you. How about that? So you can always find all of the live shows at forlibertynetwork.com, guys. This is the great place to come whenever you guys are looking for, where's the show? Oh, it's live. I can't find the link, whatever. It's all right there. And guess what, guys? Click the community page and all of a sudden, boom, guess what we have? All of our live chats. We now have a full-blown community. Now, this is not to say that we can there's a lot of things that you can do in Discord that you can't do here. However, we now have essentially the forum for our conversations. So make sure that you sign up for the forum. I've already seeded it with a bunch of discussions. If you guys want to respond to some of those, start your own conversations over there. This is going to be our activist hub for the libertarian nationalist movement going forward. So if you guys have been looking for a place to find out what's going on with the For Liberty Network, everything now lives at our new website, and it's been a hell of a slog trying to get it up, but there's tons more upgrades coming soon. So make sure that you guys check it out, read some of the blogs, share some of the journalism over there, and you can watch the chat. Can't listen and chat too on the site. Matt, do me a favor, write down specifically any challenges, any problems that you guys have with the website, and be as specific as possible, and then send them to us as like an email or a DM somewhere, and then I will get through. I will definitely do that. Looks like Andy managed to tip $5 through there. Burn it down, guys. Burn it down. Find some stuff that breaks, something that doesn't work on there, and yeah, maybe you'll win a prize. Okay, sound good? You guys ready to start the show now? Huh? Let's do it.
The Wall Street Journal headline is asking, are the therapists to blame for the rise of adults cutting off their parents? It lays out a new trend of therapists leaning into people justifying breaking ties with family. Here's part of it, quote, they're encouraging estrangement as a means of self-care. Proponents of the trend hold that advising patients to consider a cutoff from a close relative or spouse they deem toxic or unsupportive can protect their mental health and allow for emotional growth. Meanwhile, critics say that encourages self-centeredness and self-delusion and ruins families. The Wall Street Journal headline is asking...
Something to think about. Now, before we start this segment, I do have a caveat. My wife is a professional licensed therapist. That's what she does for her full-time job. That's the world that she lives in. And, you know, anybody would give an exception for their spouse and say, you know, well, she's different. Well, she actually is, because she would never encourage this kind of thing for people. And I think she's actually one of the very few therapists who actually is useful or helpful. It helps that she's a little bit right of center, but I don't think it necessarily is about politics per se, although I think for many therapists, maybe most therapists, it is about politics. But I do get a little bit of insight into this community because of Steffi. So, you know, Peter Anderson, he's a licensed marriage and family therapist as well. And he told the Wall Street Journal something that his industry should not have let him say out loud. He said that a lot of therapists are trained to take whatever the client reports at face value and then reach conclusions from one person's account. So the parent is never in the room when these conversations are happening. The therapist hears the prosecution and never hears the defense, and then they bill by the hour to certify the verdict. Here's a video from a young lady who was talking about this, just exactly this.
How much sorrow can I take? Blackbird on my shoulder, and what difference does it make when this love is over? Shall I sleep within your bed? River of unhappiness, hold your hands upon my head till I breathe my last breath.
Yeah, so for those of you who are listening to the audio version later, I'm going to go ahead and narrate this for you guys. This woman has got these subtitles up. She obviously looks like she, you know, maybe needs therapy. She says, in 2023, my therapist told me to divorce my husband, diagnosed him with narcissism. She had never met him, enabled every BPD paranoia I had, bipolar disorder, praised me, told me to cut off my family, said I should be in therapy for the rest of my life, told me I was special, a genius, that he needs me more than I need him. My ego loved it. Recommended her to all my friends. One of them later told me she told her to break up with her boyfriend on the very first call. Oh, and yeah, that therapist was divorced, by the way. So this is what these young women, and mostly it is young women, are experiencing when they go to these therapists. Elizabeth Bernstein, she laid this out in her April survey that counted 7,000 estranged parents, and 1 in 3 of them said that a therapist recommended or influenced her own child's decision to erase them. For 50 years, the point of family therapy was to get people back to the table, but a chunk of the field now sells the exit and stamps it as self-care. Carl Pillemer at Cornell put 1 in 4 Americans out of contact with a child. William Doherty spent a career at Minnesota studying how therapy goes wrong. And he says we have a culture where every bruise becomes trauma and every trauma becomes a reason to walk. These are the people that we are dealing with in this situation. So every time you hear people saying trauma, it's hard to tell whether or not they're talking about actual trauma or whether or not somebody told them no once. Good morning, John. Nice to see you, friend.
I feel like Gen Z is reinventing astrology with therapy speak. And bear with me on this. I'm going to try and explain it the best that I possibly can. But I think the reason that this is a little bit more dangerous is because unlike astrology, therapy speak is based in some level of truth. I'm so sorry if you're the type of person who actually believes in astrology, probably keep scrolling, you're not going to like me. But hear me out. We have begun talking about attachment styles and mental health diagnoses and neurodivergence and love languages as if they're personalities in and of themselves. And like astrology, we often use them as ways to try and understand what makes someone tick without really getting to know them. And so these terms become their own sort of shorthand, right? Like even though they do exist and they are based in some truth, they begin to take on this life of their own. Awareness of these concepts is probably good. Certainly better than if you had severe attachment issues and you were just like sweeping it under the rug or something. But we've begun to see them as the starting point, the unchangeable foundation of people, rather than a quality that some person just happens to have. This leads us to do kind of crazy things like draw diagrams about which attachment styles are most likely to cheat on one another or which ones should date one another. Or it leads people to believe other things about your personality, stereotypes effectively based on your category. And again, some of these things are true, but they are vast generalizations, and I do believe that they're getting a little bit out of hand with how much power we're giving them. Yes, they can be great tools for understanding your personality, but that doesn't mean they are your personality. And it might be very convenient to put people in boxes, but that doesn't make it accurate.
Yeah, very true. So this story is coming from this piece from the Wall Street Journal. Are therapists to blame for the rise of adults cutting off their parents? Which this ran last week. And so the framing of this piece is that after decades of urging families to communicate better and to work on their issues together, some therapists are now taking an opposite tack and encouraging estrangement as a means of self-care. Now, the proponents hold that a cutoff from a relative deemed toxic can protect your mental health, while critics, many of them are relationships researchers, say that it encourages self-centeredness and ruins families. Over there on forlibertynetwork.com this morning, you can see sweet Steffi. Let's take a look at the comments over at forlibertynetwork.com. Stephanie says that it can, well, maybe she says something. She says, I know people personally who have broken up romantic relationships because their therapist recommended it. It looks like I found a little break there, guys, that right there. So when I try and pop out the chat, it doesn't grab the latest one. So thank you, Steffi. Good comment there. The number that anchors this story is that it comes from an April survey of 7,000 estranged parents that found that 1 in 3 parents believe that their adult child's therapist recommended or influenced the decision to cut them off. Now, I think worth flagging, on this is that the parents' perception of what happened in a room that they weren't in is what makes this whole damning, right? And I think that critics will push back on this, is the scale of this phenomenon. According to Cornell sociologist Carl Polemer, is that about 25% of the U.S. population is estranged from a close relative at any given time, and 10% of people are estranged from a parent or a child. So the 2020 national survey of 1,300 adults found 27% estranged from a close relative, 10% from a parent or child. So that's not fringe, guys. That is 1 in 4 households. William Doherty is the strongest voice for this. He's been a professor emeritus of family social science at University of Minnesota, and he's specifically studied how therapy can actually do harm. So he said, we are in a culture where we emphasize fragility. Everything becomes trauma, and the solution increasingly is to split and to leave. And he adds that cutting off a parent should be a tragic exception, not standard practice in therapy. Warlocks00 over at forlibertynetwork.com says the push for find myself culture on social media is pulling apart marriages. When me becomes more important than us, the marriage weakens. Good point. Joni Rankin says some relationships need to end. True, Joni, but probably the exception rather than the rule. Jay Liebau of the Family Institute of Northwestern says he regularly treats people who were pushed by a previous therapy attempt to sever ties, and that the cutoff solves the wrong problem. And people may cut off a person from their best source of support. So here's a practical case. The therapist bills for creating the isolation, then somebody else bills to treat it. So the mechanism is the intake itself. Steffi and I have talked about this a lot, that there is a financial incentive for these therapists not to cure, but to keep the patient coming back. Peter Anderson, who is a licensed marriage and family therapist who was quoted in the piece, says that a lot of therapists are taught to take whatever the client says at face value and then form conclusions based on that one person's account. So a profession that only ever hears one side of a family is going to reliably produce one-sided verdicts. Right? There's no research showing that this cutoff works, by the way. The critics note no scientific evidence that separating from a close relative is inherently beneficial. And long-term damage to siblings, grandchildren, and aging parents, that is something that often goes unanticipated. What about the damage that it does to the people and the rest of the people in your family? Another clinical social worker by the name of Christine Droney in the piece, she says that a family member can die during this estrangement. So the WSJ tied the spread of going no contact to social media, of course. It's played an outsider's role in both the growing awareness of estrangement and the role that therapists play in this. The vocabulary now comes preloaded from an algorithm before anybody sits on a couch. Here's a young lady who obviously looks like she needs therapy, but here's the thing. She's been in therapy for 7 years.
Guess who's losing another therapist? It's almost been 1 year since I lost my therapist of 7 years. And today, my new therapist told me that she's leaving and going to work at the local college to see college students. So, I have a lot of feelings. I think the biggest feeling is fear. After losing my therapist of 7 years, I felt like frozen in time for a while.
7 years. 7 years. Now, here's the thing. Like, the counter case on this is real. I mean, groups like Together Estranged argue that blaming social media therapists diverts attention from the actual harmful relationships that do drive estrangement in some cases when it is necessary. Most of the therapists in the Wall Street Journal piece agree that people are sometimes justified in breaking ties, especially where there's real physical or emotional abuse. So my argument is not that no cutoff is ever warranted. It's just that the bar has collapsed and the professional class is profiting from this collapse. So, in this piece, the therapist described clients who show up already grieving a cutoff that they were talked into. Clinical social worker Christine Droney says she regularly sees people mourning estrangements that they themselves started, warning that a relative can die during this estrangement, right? So before there's any chance to repair these relationships. So this is the part that the self-care language never mentions, guys. That the clock doesn't stop while you're protecting your peace, right? So there's a internet shorthand for this. They call this going no contact. This is a pretty common phrase. Bernstein ties the whole trend's growth to social media, going no contact. And this is really driven awareness of estrangement and the role that therapists play in it. So a 24-year-old doesn't arrive at, quote, my mother is toxic in a vacuum. Right? She arrives at that after 1,000 TikToks coaching her to see ordinary friction in a relationship as abuse. Right? And then they find a therapist who will bill them to confirm it. Now, Meghan Markle's public estrangement from her father, Thomas, that's become a huge global storyline, and that was kind of sold as the case of boundary setting and self-protection, and that's the template that a lot of young people absorbed, watching Meghan Markle in her distancing, right? It's her going no contact with her family. So that distance was sold as a virtue. Right? Reconciliation is sold as a weakness, right? But whatever anyone thinks of Meghan Markle or the royal family, it normalized the idea that erasing a parent is a form of strength rather than a wound that both people carry. So the research people who are pushing back on this, these are the people who study this for a living. Carl Plemer at Cornell ran this estrangement survey. He wrote a book called Fault Lines, and he wrote it after finding out how much devastation these going no contact estrangements have been leaving behind. And his finding is that estranged people mostly feel deep sadness. They long for reconnection. They wish they could turn back the clock, which is the opposite of the liberation that this trend promises, because the cutoff rarely delivers the peace that they advertise it. Not every parent is owed a relationship. It's true. Most therapists in the Wall Street Journal piece agree that real physical or emotional abuse can justify going no contact. Sometimes distance is the same choice. So I'm not saying that this should never happen, guys. But it's just that a profession has lowered the bar from he beat me to he votes wrong and makes me anxious. And then they started billing by the hour to call that healing. So here's some questions for you guys. If a therapist only ever hears one side of a family and then recommends ending it, is that therapy or is that advocacy? And should insurance be paying for this?
I feel like Gen Z is...
Blah. Now, Doherty says that cutting off a parent should be a tragic exception. So who decides where the line sits? I want to hear from you. Drop your comments below in the chat, or you can drop them at forlibertynetwork.com, our brand new website. I'd like to know what you guys think. Roughly 1 in 4 Americans is estranged from a relative right now? Are we getting healthier by setting boundaries or not? Love to hear your thoughts on that one. You can send us a text at 573-319-1586. That's 573-319-1586. Joni Rankin says that don't most 20-year-olds go through a phase blaming their parents for who they become? Well, I guess that's true. Heart of Aries says, sounds like a lot of people need to break it off with their therapists. Yeah. Sounds like they need to be estranged from their therapists. Good morning, guys. If you're just tuning in, just thought you should know that we made an announcement this morning. The For Liberty Network now has a brand new home. So make sure you check it out. And do me a favor, try and break the website. ForLibertyNetwork.com. Now, whenever you're looking for a live show, you'll always be able to find it at the front page of ForLibertyNetwork.com. We're relaunching the Barry Goldwater revival at ForLibertyNetwork.com. America just turned 250. The movement that claimed the word liberty is dead. Barry Goldwater's road is the one we should have taken. And today, the For Liberty Network becomes its home. Guys, make sure you head over there, read our essay this morning at ForLibertyNetwork.com this morning. You're going to be able to find all of our shows. They will all stream live at ForLibertyNetwork.com, whether it's Wake Up Jefferson City, whether it's Culturama, whether it's the Cafecito Libre show, Homeschool Workshop, even our Friday night Freedom Arcade at ForLibertyNetwork.com. The For Liberty Network is 6 live shows, and so every single show, whenever they're live, you'll see pop up on the front page. We also have a working, I'm told, chat over at ForLibertyNetwork.com. Do me a favor, guys. If you're over there watching us at ForLibertyNetwork.com, drop some hearts, drop some fires, use those emojis. Try and break the show. You know what would be great, guys? If somebody could drop a $50 bill right there. See if that $50 bill button works. Try the custom. But we do have a new website where you'll be able to find all of our live shows and our journalism. I wrote a piece in the Jefferson City News Tribune this week that you guys might want to read. Stop laughing at your mother's basement. At least she owns something. So check that one out. So yeah, like I say, I really want you guys to check out the website, click on everything, try and break something. And if you can break something, find it, bring it to me. That way I'll know what bugs to fix for our brand new hub. This is home base for the libertarian nationalist movement. We're restoring the legacy of Barry Goldwater, baby. BB for Liberty says, I have a cousin who cut me off in February over politics. I reached out last month simply saying that I didn't like where things ended and I'd like to talk sometime. He replied, no thanks. Oh yeah, I've had several people do the same to me. Andy Opperman says that the one-sided narrative also poisons friends against a significant other as well. Ladies, if all you ever do is complain about your husband's faults to your girlfriend, they will grow to hate him. Arvold says, fun estrangement story. When one of my brothers told my other brother that his wife was a cheating witch, they stopped speaking because I didn't stop speaking to the first brother. Second brother stopped speaking to me. Turns out the second brother wife was a lying, cheating witch. Yikes. That's sad. Joni Rankin asked the real questions. Who's paying these so-called therapists, or do they just find them on TikTok? They just find them on TikTok. BB says, Aaron Rodgers shut out his family for about a decade. He just started trying to reconcile this year. Aaron Rodgers. We love having you guys over at ForLibertyNetwork.com this morning. I see we've got a couple of people watching us live over there. Thanks for checking it out. Like I said, this is the new hub for the network. And just so you know, we are making a move to replace Discord over on the channel. So make sure that you spend a little time, register with our community at the community page. We now have forums and all of that. So we'd love to see you guys participate in our community, join the conversation, and let's build the For Liberty Network, okay? We'll take a quick little break. When we get back, we're going to talk about why Joseph McCarthy, not just Barry Goldwater, was right and didn't go far enough. This is the Wake Up America show, and you're watching the For Liberty Network at forlibertynetwork.com. Tis the year of our Lord, 1801. President Trump Jefferson casts his gaze o'er the sovereign Potomac and beholds a most wretched spectacle upon the waters. From the cursed shores of Tripoli and the welfare coffers of distant Minnesota comes the brazen Captain Ilhan Omar, commanding her fleet of Barbary pirates. She demands her ransom, billions in reparations. Yet one instrument of fortitude suffices, a steaming chalice of Jeffersonian Java, bold and unapologetic from For Liberty shop. No more tribute to rogues, he thunders, and dispatches the Navy and Marines to smash Omar's fleet asunder. Trump Jefferson stands triumphant as Omar's plunder meets the end it deserved back in Minnesota. Jeffersonian Java, the coffee that gives true Americans the courage to refuse tribute and rebuke fraud. Procure yours at forlibertyshop.com and make America caffeinated again.
Here at Alligator Alcatraz, the fence.
In a city where businesses never sleep, the technology still crashes. When technology turns criminal, they send up the signal. He's not a myth, and he's definitely not your nephew who knows computers. He installs, he protects, he backs it up, he keeps your business online and out of trouble. Managed IT, security, cloud, support that actually answers the phone. Layer 8 tech. When your network breaks, he wakes. Call Drew before your tech needs a rescue signal. George Washington spent 8 years making sure nobody knew where he was. Troop movements, secret dispatches. The man was a ghost. So when a barista leaned out a window and asked for his exact location in exchange for points they called stars, he looked at his flag and said, "I've already got my stars. 13 of them. Keep your dignity and your location intact. Grab a box of Washington's Revolutionary Roast at forlibertyshop.com.
Are you tired of the strange radioactive effects of leftist culture? Do you ever wonder what happened to good old-fashioned American values? Well, fear no more, because there's a new force fighting back against the cultural rot of today. Introducing Culturama, a right-of-center talk show that's taking back the future today. Hosted by none other than blonde bombshell herself, Daniela Pensack. She's not just talking, she's taking culture back. With sharp takes, brilliant guests, and a few surprises along the way. Tune in to the live video podcast twice a week, because the future doesn't have to be weird. It can be Culturama.
If there wasn't going to be somebody who was a fiery champion of liberty, somebody who would get out there and who would be aggressive, and if they wouldn't do it with more fire or passion than I had, then I would go and I would fight this battle for us. I've fought for the principles that we all share. Parties tend to be secondary to me. We're here because we believe in the principles of liberty. I am not a perfect messenger, but I think I'm a damn good one. This is a replica of our first president's flintlock pistol. You have my full support, my respect, and my gun.
I think that the heart of my philosophy is much more libertarianism than well, that's the fashionable word these days, I guess. A conservative is no longer just that. He's a libertarian and always has been.
Yet any time you and I question the schemes of the do-gooders, we're denounced as being against their humanitarian goals. They say we're always against things, we're never for anything.
is fascist? Fascism is private ownership, private enterprise, but total government control and regulation.
Well, the trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. This is the issue of this election. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
The conservative, so-called, is the one that says less government. Get off my back, get out of my pocket, and let me have more control of my own destiny.
The left in America tells us not to have kids to save the planet, but in Cuba, they stopped having kids because the state destroyed the earth.
Collectivism doesn't create justice. It creates shortages, corruption, and power for the few. I've not just seen it, I've lived it. My family escaped it. Now, the same failed ideas are being sold to a new generation. I'm here to expose the lie and defend liberty. From Cuba to Argentina to the United States, the freedom movement is rising. Cafecito Libre is the exile voice of economic truth. Cafecito Libre, premiering March 3rd as part of the For Liberty Network, only on Rumble.
I think we should keep in mind when we refer to Democrats, when we refer to the administration, that there are definitely two groups of Democrats as of today. Number one, there are the millions of loyal Americans who have voted the Democrat ticket. Individuals who are just as loyal, who hate communism just as much, and love America just as much as the average Republican. That's one group. On the other hand, there is that small, closely knit group of administration Democrats who are now the complete prisoners and under the complete domination of the bureaucratic, communistic Frankenstein which they themselves have created. Ladies and gentlemen, they shouldn't be called that administration Democrat Party. To call them Democrats is an insult to the millions of loyal American Democrats. They shouldn't be called Democrats. They should be referred to properly as the Commie-Crat Party.
The Commie-Crat Party. Good morning. Rise in freedom. I'm Austin Peterson. You're watching the Wake Up America show. We're on the For Liberty Network at the brand new website, forlibertynetwork.com, that dropped live today. Make sure you guys head over to forlibertynetwork.com at some point today. Sign up for our community over there. Jump into the Discord over there at forlibertynetwork.com. Joel Ledamore says, I wonder which browser is best. Using Chrome right now. El Ratio Hornblower, all of our friends hanging out over at forlibertynetwork.com are here with us today. The For Liberty Network is the new hub for the Barry Goldwater revival, which starts now. Make sure that you read the piece at For Liberty Network, guys. Barry Goldwater is the road not taken. We're going to take that road starting now. On July 3rd of this year, a Democratic Socialist Zohran Mamdani stood at the podium inside New York City Hall and marked the 250th birthday of the United States. Zohran is a dues-paying member of the Democratic Socialists of America. That's an organization that announced this month that it has passed 120,000 members, the largest socialist group in American history. We are building its counter-movement. That's right here. And I'm pretty sure that with 79 people watching us live over on Rumble and a couple of people over at ForLibertyNetwork.com, we can absolutely pack out our local IHOP or maybe our Denny's. Echo Lounge would be bustling. But that's how revolutions start. Slowly, and then all at once. If you want to join the Barry Goldwater revival movement, make sure you check out ForLibertyNetwork.com. Sign up today to become a dues-paying member of the Peterson's Patriots program. Help us to build the For Liberty Network today. Those who stand with us today will all be enjoying the blessings of their countrymen. Red Pill Prof is already on board. We appreciate you very much, Nick. So 3 weeks after Zohran Mamdani commemorated the 250th anniversary of the United States, his handpicked candidates swept the New York House primaries, knocked out the chairman of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus, and put the DSA on track to double their seats in Congress. And then Cato, which is a libertarian institute that nobody can wave off as like right-wing paranoia, published a number that should have stopped the room cold. Among Gen Z, 38% of these young people hold a favorable view of communism. Not socialism, communism. So they are the only age group left in America that likes it more than it hates it. Now, in 1950, Joseph McCarthy stood up and said that this exact movement had gotten inside our institutions. And at that time, and now, even still, if you go to youtube.com and you look up Joseph McCarthy, it's all slander and libel and destruction of his character. And they made his name a slur. They turned McCarthyism into a word that you throw at a man to make him stop talking. But Joseph McCarthy was right. A great nation is never destroyed from the outside. It's destroyed by the enemies within. And when the Soviets' own cables were finally decoded and released in 1955, they named hundreds of Americans who had been working for Moscow, which is the precise penetration that he had warned about. So the man that they called a liar was right about the disease infecting the United States. The country just liked the lie that let it sleep on this problem that has been growing for the last 70 years. Now, Venona was a real thing. This was a National Security Agency code-breaking operation. This ran from 1943 into the 1980s, and it stayed so classified that even President Truman was kept in the dark about this program. When the government finally released the decrypts in 1995, historians John Haynes and Harvey Clare documented at least 349 Americans had a covert relationship with Soviet intelligence, and that the American Communist Party itself was knowingly involved in espionage against the United States. Yes, it was happening. The decoded cables produced the first hard indication of Julius Rosenberg's spying, references to Alger Hiss's espionage, and proof that Soviets had penetrated the Manhattan Project, and evidence that agents had reached the highest levels of the State and Treasury departments. Harry Dexter White, which was one of the names, was an assistant Secretary of the Treasury. So this is the government that McCarthy said was compromised, and the cables said that he was right. Now, when this surveillance program, Venona, went public, even hostile voices, like the people who were flinging the McCarthyism label around, even they flinched. They wrote in the Washington Post in 1996, liberal columnist Nicholas Van Hoffman conceded McCarthy botched the particulars but landed closer to the truth than the people who laughed at him. The London Observer put it that historians who spent 2 generations vilifying McCarthy were now facing the unpleasant truth that he had been right. Now, the serious defense, the book-length defense, if you want to read it, is a book by the name of M. Stanton Evans, and the book is called Blacklisted by History, and it's built on 6 years based on the primary files from Venona. So his argument is that the Venona traffic and the open Soviet archives confirmed exactly the infiltration that McCarthy had named. Evans wrote that the real Joe McCarthy had vanished into the mists of fable and recycled error. Now, what was telling was that Haynes, the Venona historian who disagreed with Evans's conclusion, still praised the book's research as honest and something that no honest historian could ignore. Now, here's the thing. I mean, this is not a fantasy, right? In the speech in Wheeling that McCarthy gave, he laid out that in 6 years, the population living under Soviet domination had grown from 180 million to 800 million. And the odds in the world had flipped from 9-1 to freedom's favor to 8-5 against it. So McCarthy wasn't inventing an enemy. He was reading a map. Another American president also happened to find this as well. Some conspiracy theorists love to recite the JFK conspiracy as if it's evidence of like the international conspiracy of Jews, but the international conspiracy of communism is what JFK was talking about. Take a listen.
Inherently and historically, the very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society. And we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweighed the dangers which are cited to justify it. Even today, there is little value in opposing the threat of a closed society by imitating its arbitrary restrictions. Even today, there is little value in ensuring the survival of our nation if our traditions do not survive with it. And there is very grave danger that an announced need for increased security will be seized upon by those anxious to expand its meaning.
Right there. People think he's talking about the Bilderberg, not the Bilderberg group, but like Bohemian Grove. You know, if you watch Alex Jones, it'll be like, oh, this is about Bohemian Grove, but which Richard Nixon said was the faggiest goddamn thing you could ever imagine. Which is why we're Nixon maxing. We're Nixon maxing and we're Goldwater maxing this morning. But John F. Kennedy was talking about the Soviet Union. He was talking about the conspiracy of international communism.
So often described as an ideology or a belief that exists somewhere other than in the United States. Let me ask you, sir, just how serious a threat to our national security are these communist subversive activities in the United States today?
Well, I think they're serious. I think it's a matter that we should continue to give great care and attention to. We should support the laws which the United States has passed in order to protect us from those who would destroy us from within. We should sustain the Department of Justice in its efforts and the FBI, and we should be continually alert. I think if the United States is maintaining a strong society here in the United States, I think that we can meet any internal threat. The major threat is external and will continue.
Interesting. So here's an anchor number that from the Cato Institute in their June 2026 survey. Gen Z favored socialism over capitalism, 53% to 45%, and 38% held a favorable view of communism, full-blown communism, making Gen Z the only age group in the country with a net positive view of communism. Communism is also becoming a big business here in the United States, ironically enough.
We're here at the Lenin School in Bristol, and I'm going around asking comrades what they got from the merch stall. What's your haul?
I've got a guitar pick from the RCP with Marx at the back. I've got Marx and Engels' 3D bust, Marx's Introduction to Women's Struggle, and also I got very inspired by the talk by Rob Sewell, so I got his book.
I won the Lenin statue in the raffle, and I got this fantastic T-shirt as well.
I bought the official Lenin School T-shirt.
Yesterday, I got myself the 2 volumes of The Idol, The In Defense of Lenin, written by Rob Sewell and Alan Woods. And then today, after Lewis's talk, got it in the cause of labour, because I found that talk very inspiring. I got the British General Strike, A Communist History of the British General Strike by Ben Glenecki. It recounts the history of the General Strike of 1926, how the workers basically got so close to taking power in Britain, but were actually ended up getting betrayed by their own leadership.
Mullen School Hall, got a big hall here. I got Marxism and Art. I got Ireland. Especially this period of Irish history doesn't get taught in Britain very often, so there's a lot to go through here and chew through. And Alan Wood's a lovely writer. Got a Karl Marx poster. Then I got a little bust for my mantelpiece.
I bought an RCP song collection, which I love my revolutionary songs. A book on the General Strike by Benji, as well as a bookmark, and of course, can't forget Lenin bust, right?
Yeah, Marxism, communism, Leninism. It's big business. Jake Woz says, imagine thinking these Trotskyist leftist tards have anything to do with communism. China is building the new world. Capitalism is an outmoded system of production. Jake. That's funny. It's a really good joke. Now, the organized wing of communists in the United States is growing fast. The Democratic Socialists of America went from roughly 6,000 to 8,000 members before 2016 to more than 100,000 by 2026. So they have gone from 8,000 to 100,000 in 10 years. Chapters are in all 50 states and announced this month that they have crossed 120,000. They are the largest socialist organization in U.S. history, and they're winning real elections, not just meetings. Zohran Mamdani elected in New York. In June 2026, his allies swept New York's House primaries. DSA member Daria-Liza Villa-Chevalier unseating the 5-term chair of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus. And the DSA is now set to double their representation in Congress. DSA-backed Nithya Rahman advancing to the Los Angeles mayoral general against incumbent Karen Bass. Now look at what the platform asks for. The DSA's program includes abolishing the U.S. Senate, replacing the Electoral College, defunding police departments, and abolishing prisons. So it's not tweaks to the tax codes. It's not just Medicare for all. They are demanding to dismantle the constitutional structure. Now, McCarthy's critics claim that he was the one that was endangering the United States. It turns out that he was right all along. Now, what is something that... One thing that we could do.
One of our laws is that communism is not allowed. It's banned, so you can't do it. One of our laws is that communism is not allowed.
Based in red pill. John Miltimore is going to be joining us live here in America to talk about that tension between the United States and China when it comes to the AI race. Make sure you stick around. He's going to be joining us live in 5 minutes. We've got bonus content available for you to unlock today. If you're a true capitalist, head over to forlibertyshop.com this morning and buy something from the Grift Shop. The Jeffersonian Java is our #1 seller over at forlibertyshop.com. And unlike the communists, we are not... Oh, God, it smells so good. We're not hypocrites. So we believe in capitalism and we practice it. Joel Ledamore says, better dead than red. My grandpa would be losing his right now with those DSA pinkos. Grandpa sounds like a patriot. Also, while you're there today, make sure you check out forlibertynetwork.com this morning. Sign up for an account and join us at forlibertynetwork.com. We're going to be moving away from Discord to a large extent. We want our conversations to happen on our website and our community. So make sure that you click the community page over at forlibertynetwork.com. Read our article about the Goldwater revival. Make sure that you guys visit forlibertynetwork.com at some point today. And while you're there, head over, read the Goldwater revival, like, share, comment on our stories, and make sure that you join the community. When you click the community button right there, you can see all of the latest from our forum. Open the forum, start a conversation, share our conversation today, and we'll be very grateful that you did. Okay, coming up next, John Miltimore joins us live to talk about the AI race between China and the United States. Will we win? Well, not if we keep banning data centers. It's the Wake Up America show on the 4 Liberty Network.
Are you tired of the strange radioactive effects of leftist culture? Do you ever wonder what happened to good old-fashioned American values? Well, fear no more, because there's a new force fighting back against the cultural rot of today. Introducing Culturama, a right-of-center talk show that's taking back the future today. Hosted by none other than blonde bombshell herself, Daniela Pensack. She's not just talking, she's taking culture back. With sharp takes, brilliant guests, and a few surprises along the way. Tune in to the live video podcast twice a week, because the future doesn't have to be weird. It can be Culturama.
If there wasn't going to be somebody who was a fiery champion of liberty, somebody who would get out there and who would be aggressive, and if they wouldn't do it with more fire or passion than I had, then I would go and I would fight this battle for us. I've fought for the principles that we all share. Parties tend to be secondary to me. We're here because we believe in the principles of liberty. I am not a perfect messenger, but I think I'm a damn good one. This is a replica of our first president's flintlock pistol. You have my full support, my respect, and my gun.
I think that at the heart of my philosophy is much more libertarianism than well, that's the fashionable word these days, I guess. A conservative is no longer just that. He's a libertarian and always has been.
Yet any time you and I question the schemes of the do-gooders, we're denounced as being against their humanitarian goals. They say we're always against things, we're never for anything.
What is fascism? Fascism is private ownership, private enterprise, but total government control and regulation.
Well, the trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. This is the issue of this election. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conservative, so-called, is the one that says less government, get off my back, get out of my pocket, and let me have more control of my own destiny.
One of the most common areas of concern I hear about is the noise that they could emit. But one community in southwest Michigan has been experiencing the reality of a data center next door for a couple of years now, and they say the sound has changed their lives. What would you say to people who've never experienced this for themselves?
It sounds like someone set up a vacuum, like in your living room, and the vacuum is just, that thing needs to be cleaned. Like the filter is clogged up, so it's a high-pitch whining, and they just left it on and walked out.
You've seen movies and stuff where they have somebody in a cell torture them with sound. And that's basically what it is.
Lindy Valenzuela and Marjorie and Billy Finn are neighbors who all live directly across the street from a data center in Dowagiac, Michigan. The data center is known by residents as Hyperscale Data. It is owned by Alliance Cloud Services, LLC, a company based in Las Vegas, Nevada.
That is an annoying noise. Good morning, Rise and Freedom. I'm Austin Peterson. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America show on the For Liberty Network. On June 9th, Bloomberg reported China is spending about $295 billion to build a national network of state-owned AI computing hubs. They have a target of 70% AI penetration in their economy by 2027. But back home here in the United States, 75 projects worth over $100 billion Over $130 billion got killed or stalled by local opposition in just the first 3 months of this year. And 71% of Americans tell Gallup they don't want a data center anywhere near them. My next guest says the answer to Chinese central planning is not American central planning. He's a senior editor at the American Institute for Economic Research. Mondays, we call it Mondays with Miltimore. Good morning, John. Nice to see you again, sir. Welcome back to the show, man.
Happy to be with you today.
Glad to have you here, John. Appreciate you very much. John, China rolled out about a $295 billion state-run plan to blanket the country in AI compute. So Washington's reflex is to answer central planning with central planning, more subsidies, government buying a stake in Intel. What's your response?
Well, I was very nervous when I heard that, when Sam Altman came out and actually offered, the government a 5% stake, because if we're going to succeed with AI, we need to have competition to do it. You can't tell me that the feds are going to be treating, open AI equally if suddenly they're holding a 5% stake. So this idea that, we need to be competitive in this AI race with China by adopting some of the CCP's methods, I think is pretty crazy. As far as those numbers, with Americans opposing, data centers, I find it curious. Everyone I talk to, they have questions about this, and there's a lot of people, these aren't ideological people or even very political people, but they have real concerns about data centers. And so I just ask them, like, what's their concern? And you can learn a lot by just asking that question of people. Say, like why do you oppose this, or why do you have concerns? Most of them actually can't give a very clear answer. And so to me, this looks like we're kind of witnessing a moral panic. There's this new technology out there. Everyone's talking about it. It's very little understood. And a lot of people are nervous about it. But I think, by having some probing questions, we can answer a lot of questions and really show that these aren't the problem that many people think they are.
Now, we just played a news report, John, of a data center across the street from where people live, and that high-pitched whining noise, extremely annoying. Noise pollution is pollution, John. That's a problem. What's the solution?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to live next to an airport either, right? And if I had a nice $2 million home and I found out an airport is going in, a mile away, I wouldn't be real happy about that. But we have solutions. Property rights are, we have a long history of dealing with situations like that through property rights. And this is a taking to some extent. If I build an airport next to your property, you are taking the value of my property. And we have, litigation can solve a lot of these problems. I think if we give this time, we'll see the same thing with data centers. If the local government greenlighted a project and everybody next to that is suffering because of that, they have to listen to this. Their property might have lost value because of it. There are, legal paths people can take to get restitution on those fronts. But we got to give things like that time.
Now, let's talk about the rebuttal here on this, because if AI is a decisive military and economic technology, can the free market move fast enough on its own, or is national security where industrial policy is justified when it fails everywhere else? In other words, if states are banning data centers and it is an important military technology, should the federal government override those states and force data centers to be allowed to be built?
I hear a lot of disagreement even with libertarians on this question. I know some very sensible libertarians that think the feds need to, tell states, sorry, you can't be blocking these projects. I don't think that's the right idea. The truth is, if you have some states like California that say, no, we don't want these, and you have, other states that start to say, you know what, like we see the benefits of these, and we got to look at the Constitution here, and states are the one. We have these very broad powers for states. I don't see anything constitutionally that gives the feds the power to do this. You can say, well, it's a national security issue. You can say that just about anything, right? And even you have this. You could say we have federal lands, right? Like even if the feds want to say, hey, we have federal land here, we'll do these projects over there. If states, there's all kinds of outcomes better, to me, solutions better than just forcing states to adopt these things if they don't want to.
Now, you said that the CHIPS Act is a disaster. This is a bill that was supposed to bring chip making home. So what did the tens of billions in subsidies buy us with the CHIPS Act?
I mean, that's a good question. And here's the problem when you get Washington and just sending all this money around. You're really picking the winners and losers. And go back to, this would be like, we actually have an article this week coming out on this. I'm not the author, but he made a wonderful point. This would be like, BlackBerry in 2007 saying, hey, whoa, like this technology is adapting really fast. I'm going to give the feds a 15% stake in my company. And instead of Apple coming in and winning through competition, suddenly BlackBerry is in there with the lawmakers and they start passing regulations on Apple. And suddenly Apple isn't able to just crush the competition through the free market like they did, because BlackBerry's in the boardroom, in the meeting room with government officials, and you end up with all these regulations that are designed to cripple the competition. This is the risk of doing that with AI. And when you invite some tech company leaders in and leave others out, this is not what the Fed should be doing. But if you look, the Trump administration in some ways is doing exactly that. And I heard great enthusiasm from some people in the Trump administration and Trump himself about this idea of giving OpenAI a stake and how it'll be great for the people. We need to let these AI companies battle it out. And, I think if you look at China, I will predict in 10 years, China is way behind in the AI race because you can't centrally plan AI in this way. It's going to end up with a very the Chinese Communist Party telling people how to engineer this and what works and what doesn't. It's going to end up with a very lousy product. And we should be allowing tech companies to pioneer this themselves and keeping the feds out of it.
Now, you said that just now that you think China is behind on the AI race. And when it comes to building data centers, they are behind us infrastructure-wise, but they're not behind us technology-wise, because they've been releasing these open weight models and they're free. And we've been restricting open source models. The government's been clamping down on them here in the United States. So, does locking down our own models just hand China a victory in this?
Oh, absolutely. And if you look at some of the things the Pentagon has ordered in the last year, like it looks more like China than America, right? When you start to frown on OpenAI and the Pentagon should not be able to decide how these guys engineer their algorithm, but we see a lot of people that seem to think they should. To go back to China, that I think you're right that we are in this sort of AI race. And this is a point I thought about early on, because we're trying to, all that moral panic we're seeing about data centers is something I'm trying to understand. And there's some theories on this. And one theory, a colleague of mine, Pete Earle, has a piece in the American Thinker that just went up. And he makes a point early on, like it might be that AI companies are just a very convenient villain. Electricity prices are very, very high, and they're going higher. And a lot of people that cause those prices to go higher through all these regulations, AI, these data centers might be a very, convenient culprit for them. Another theory I've heard, and I haven't seen a lot of talk about this, is that it's actually a disinformation campaign led by China. And I don't have evidence of that, but we know we're in a sort of an arms race with China on this. And the idea that the Chinese government might be waging a disinformation campaign and might be behind a lot of the negative news and stories and propaganda about data centers is something I hadn't thought about until just recently when someone who's very connected in Washington brought it up to me. Again, I can't bring receipts on that, but it's something that was thought-provoking and something I might dig into a little bit, because there is this kind of onslaught of negativity around data centers that I don't really understand.
Arvold over in the chat says, didn't AP call me Pocahontas recently for saying data centers affect the greater environment? Yes, I did, Pocahontas. You think
there's a great thing on that. A quick point, AP, because this was something, talking to an adult on the baseball team that, she made a point very hostile to, and she's a horticulturist, but, so she's looked into this from that perspective a little bit, the environment. And she said, well, they just use so much water. And I dug into that a little bit. And golf courses in this country use about 30 times as much water as data centers. almond farming, just almonds, not agriculture overall, just almond farming uses dozens of times more water than data centers. And so, yeah, like data centers use water, like industry, a paper mill or a steel mill. Yeah, they use water. All these things use water. Data centers are not unique in that front, but for some reason that is a concern for a lot of people, that they use water, or they're going to harm the environment in ways that other industries or tech do not.
Now, the ratepayers, let's talk about the people paying their electric bills, because they're saying that data centers are responsible. There was one survey that said that like 63% of a $9.3 billion price jump in a single year were due to data center. People that are opening their power bills, are not happy about this because they're blaming data centers. So when a retiree's bill spikes because a hyperscaler plugged in down the road, I mean, is that the free market, or are the costs getting socialized here?
It's not the free market, because what you have is an increased demand, and what you need is an increase of production to match that. But the regulatory climate isn't allowing more electricity in some of these places, especially certain states. Pete Earl, who I referenced earlier, my colleague, he had a great point. This is like blaming pedestrians and drivers for all the road congestion, instead of the people that say, why aren't we allowing more roads to be built? Why aren't we doing things that allow this? Because a lot of people want to drive on the roads. We have too many people. It's not the pedestrians' fault, and it's not the people that are. It's not the fault of data centers either. We need to allow production to meet demand.
Too bad water is not reusable, and Jam says. Yeah, I know. That's the thing. Once you use water, you got to throw it away.
No, that's what's so funny, because you dig into this and some people say, well, yeah, all that agriculture water, it can be reused. Same with data centers. Like, this is no different. A lot of people seem to think it is. It's not.
Now, let's talk about the things that libertarians should be angry about, because states are in a bidding war to lure these things with other people's money. Virginia they handed the data centers over $1 billion a year in tax breaks. So isn't the real scandal here this corporate welfare subsidy that's going on to build these things, John?
Yeah, no, whenever I see things like that, it's irritating to me. Like, it's the same thing when you see a football stadium and you have taxpayers putting up a football stadium for $1 billion owner. I don't like those things. I will say this is something, and I don't know a lot about this, the economics of AI, we need to allow that to work. And right now, everybody's using AI. Some people are paying for it. Maybe you have a Claude subscription. I haven't had to pay for it yet. But because I'm not paying for it, I use AI very indiscriminately. I use it for anything, right? Like the dumbest, silliest question, like I'll do it. I'll put it in there, and maybe that is using just a fraction. Maybe it's using very little. But at some point, I think we need prices. If we allow the pricing system to work, it's going to work through that. But if we give government control over this, the pricing suddenly isn't being controlled, right? Private companies are going to find a pricing eventually that makes sense, where, this is using a lot of AI, this is using a lot of energy, so we got to charge for that. If you get the government involved, the prices are not going to work. And what it's going to be is taxpayers are going to end up paying for that. And that is when you could see real problems, I think, emerge. When you don't have a pricing system and everybody's over consuming AI, that could create a lot of problems.
If you're just tuning in the Wake Up America show, I'm speaking to John Miltimore from the American Institute of Economic Research, talking about the data centers. Now, AOC wants a federal pause, John. She says that the right is that it's time for us to shut them down, baby. Like, we want to shut down immigration, and we want to pause. She wants to pause data centers. So,
I mean, didn't Bernie say that like 2 weeks ago too? I'm not surprised. It's funny because if you look, so much progressives, people who identify as progressive, anything that's actually progressive, they want to stop. Because I don't think they're actually progressive. They like to control things, and they want to control it through Washington and decide like which ones are we're going to allow to operate and which ones we think are going to. No, you can't do it. So I'm not surprised AOC is hostile to these.
John, what else is going on in your world? Have you written about anything interesting lately?
I did just write something at the Washington Examiner last week. Daniel Ortega, he's been a dictator for a while now. We've known that, but he actually took the step of just saying, And for those who don't know, he's the president of Nicaragua, a very poor and struggling country. But he said he's not even going to hold elections anymore. And it did remind me, about 40 years ago, Reagan called him a dictator in designer glasses. And it's something at the time people said, no, he's a true believer. He's a fighter, a fighter for the people. And no, we know exactly what Daniel Ortega is. He's not interested in democratic socialism, which was how he reinvented himself, by the way, AP. So he came to power as a Marxist revolutionary and then tanked the economy in Nicaragua, was out of power for 17 years, but then saw this new trend of, like set by Hugo Chavez and others of let's temper the Marxism and sell democratic socialism. And it worked. He got back into power and quickly proved he doesn't care about democracy. He was interested in power all along.
John, where can people get great takes like that from you, sir?
Hey, that'll be published on my Substack tomorrow. The Take by John Miltimore. Sign up and you'll be getting it in your inbox tomorrow morning.
John Miltimore joins us here live every Monday. We call it Mondays with Miltimore, and we're so grateful to have him. John, have a wonderful day. We appreciate you very much, brother.
Hey, it was my pleasure, AP. Have a great week.
You as well.
Why people loathe you. I mean, some people do loathe you.
Yes, some people do.
But do you understand why? Do you think what you're doing is helpful for Western democracy?
Maybe some people do loathe me. And that's probably true. I don't care. But the fact that, as you pointed out, 250 million people follow me is that I think a lot more people actually like me than don't. And I think a lot more people hate you and the media more than you realize.
Oh, God, I love you so much. Nothing could make me hate Elon Musk. I love that so much. If you're just tuning into the Wake Up America show, good morning. I'm your host, Austin Peterson. We're glad and thankful to have you here. Today, we are Goldwater maxing. The For Liberty Network launched our brand new live network page over at forlibertynetwork.com. Make sure that you guys check it out this morning. You can watch all of our live shows at forlibertynetwork.com right now. If you guys want, if you're looking for a show, you want to find out information, you can't find a website, it's all going to live at forlibertynetwork.com. That's forlibertynetwork.com. Looks like we got a tip over there, as a matter of fact, and it worked. Joel Lettimore, Steelbringer, tipped $17.76 this morning. Brad, add that to the bonus content level this morning, if you can hear me, bud. Head on over to forlibertynetwork.com this morning. Looks like El Ratio Hornblower is using it. Steelbringer is using it, and you guys can now watch the show and chat over there. Also, we are going to be slowly moving away from the Discord channel, moving people away from Discord over to our own community page. So please do take some time today, guys, after you read the Goldwater Revival blog. Take some time, join the community. When you click on the community page, open up the forums, start a conversation, help us to build the Goldwater Republican movement within the Republican Party. Red Pill Prof is on board. Joel Lettimore's on board. Is UR Amalek, is he on board? Rare Camellia says, I love me some Goldwater. So thanks to those data centers, guys, I was able to build us a beautiful new hub for the For Liberty Network. If you head to forlibertynetwork.com, you can watch the show. You have your live chat right there. You can see all of the other shows on the network. Oh, looky there. I've already got my first little problem. The Goldwater Revival starts now. You can read that at forlibertynetwork.com. Find out the new movement in the GOP. We're Goldwater maxing this summer, guys. Join the movement. Looks like I got a little, there we go. Okay, now it's working. So do me a favor, guys, break the website. So when you go to forlibertynetwork.com, if something breaks, something doesn't work, you get an error, just write down whatever it was that you did and whatever happened so that I can fix on all the bugs over there. But we've got a new place now, a new hub for the network. If you're not a Peterson's Patriot, if you haven't joined, if you're not like Camellia Peterson and paying your membership dues faithfully, she's been with us since the very beginning, then today is the day. Become a Peterson's Patriot. Sign up to support the For Liberty Network. As you can see, we've been working very hard to grow this network and grow the liberty movement here. So make sure you check that out over at forlibertynetwork.com. You can also make a purchase of delicious Founding Flavors coffee while you're there. And every purchase during the live show goes to help unlock that sweet, sweet bonus content. If we raise $100, you'll see our mini documentary about a hero of the American Revolution. Coming up next, she was canceled in Portland, of course, not because of what she said, but because of what she didn't say. Coming up next, my interview with Mary McDonald-Lewis, the voice of Faye from G.I. Joe, the animated series in the 1980s. It's the Wake Up America show, and that's on the For Liberty Network. Good morning, Rise and Freedom. I'm Austin Peterson. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America show, and that's on the For Liberty Network. Have you clicked the like button yet? It's so easy. If today's your first time watching the Wake Up America show, we hope you'll follow us. If you click the follow button, you'll get a notification whenever we go live, which is 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 a.m. Central Time. Well, my next guest has been in your car, in your living room, and your childhood for 40 years. You probably never knew her name. She's the voice of OnStar and in millions of General Motors vehicles. She's Lady Jaye on G.I. Joe, the cartoon, Lois Lane on Super Friends, Maven on Batman, the animated series. Oh, yeah. Veronica Dean on Archer, and Ivan in Pixar's Lightyear. She's also a dialect coach on Twilight and Grimm, a theater director, national board member of SAG-AFTRA, and since 2019, she's been run out of the Portland arts community for refusing to say things that she doesn't believe. Well, that's against our principles of freedom of speech. Please welcome everyone, Mary McDonald-Lewis to the Wake Up America show. Good morning, Mary.
Good morning, Austin. Thank you so much for having me. Proud to be here.
Glad to have you here. Well, Mary, it started with something that sounds almost trivial to people who weren't there. A theater company asked you to put your pronouns in your bio and announce them out loud at donor events. You didn't protest, you just didn't do it. So walk us through what you sensed in that moment, how you felt, and what made you decide the answer had to be no.
Sure, Austin. Thanks for asking. It was 2019 and Portland, Oregon. Many of us know it as kind of a bastion of liberalism, had been moving from its classical liberal roots that my parents enjoyed in the 1950s when my father was a minister at the First Unitarian Church in downtown Portland, Oregon. I didn't finish growing up there, but I was there for a small part of my childhood and returned in 93. But when we were there in the 50s and then all the way through those 90s and into the early 2000s, Portland was a place of intellectual thought, of creative explorations, and of essentially freedom of mind, holding with classical liberal principles. But slowly but surely, the chokehold of Marxism began to take hold, first disguised as sort of the George Floyd riots, and then obviously came to blossom throughout the lockdown, and now has grown to the point of both being absurd and dangerous. But it began in a slow boil in the theater community, 2019, when they started having little meetings about equity and about DEI-flavored sort of gatherings, and then slowly morphed into land acknowledgments and this declaration of pronouns in both written and spoken presentations. As Oregon's leading dialect coach, employed at Portland's two largest equity houses, union houses, as well as every single other smaller theater that needed language, accent, or dialect provided, and many, many other theaters throughout Oregon, I was considered a kind of a primary presenter to donors because language is interesting and dialect is interesting, and my presentations were interesting. They were beloved, that people were fascinated by how language hooks together. But you know, speaking of language, Austin, that leads us into the notion of how language is used as both to help and hurt. And as soon as we moved into that notion of compelled speech, forced speech, it didn't matter what they were asking me to say. The very fact that I was not being asked, but required to say anything as a protector, defender, and creator of language, quite literally creator of languages. On Grimm, I created the Grimmish spoken on that show, on that series. As someone who, at her core, is about the spoken word, I think I was really well equipped to notice that something was terribly, terribly wrong.
It's quite
but
a story.
Simply being quiet wasn't enough.
Yeah,
simply just
for
kind of
sure.
declining
Freedom of speech isn't just about being able to say whatever you like and potentially offend people. Freedom of speech is also about not being compelled to speak.
That's exactly right.
Mary, you've written about a meeting at a Portland Center stage where HR explained that call-out culture was encouraged. And when you asked whether you could call someone out, you were told no because you're white. So can you please walk us through that?
You know, Austin, this was very early in my education in just exactly what was going on. And I have to say, as a side note, I'm so grateful for the fact that I was exposed to this madness, as I know so many of your listeners are, and I know you guys are, because even as it strips away everything you thought you could hold as true here in America, even as all of that was called into question and you're asked to pay a terrible, terrible price for standing up for what you believe are our core principles, you're given something so much more important and so much better in terms of how you live your life, even in the face of the loss. So I regret nothing. But I was so surprised in those early days when I asked quite earnestly. I was like, oh, that's how we're doing it now? Okay. Then certainly I can say this to this other woman, or we can bring her in and we can have a meeting with the three of us to talk about our differences here. Oh no, because of the color of your skin. This young, white, HR female, standard issue, suicidally empathetic woman, the very kind of person who typically is a vector for this infection, said this to me. And in those early days, Austin, I was capable of being shocked. And I was also capable of suffering grief and loss and sorrow and rage and bafflement and all of those feelings. Those feelings have now been integrated and found, landed in kind of a useful place for me now so that I can put them to work to better effect in the long run, I think.
Yeah, I love that you've identified the vector of bad ideas there. It's interesting. There are all of these democratic socialists running for office across the country, and that what you'll find is that the biggest purveyors of these ideas who will advocate for diversity, equity, and inclusion will often be the young white liberal females. And African Americans frequently do not identify with the ideals of what they call democratic socialism. But I'm curious to have you talk a little bit about this incident. In February of 2025, you were 13 days from opening the Macbeth at Milagro Theater, self-funded, ticket selling, fight choreography, ready to go. One of my favorite plays. One Facebook post went up and the whole thing burned down inside a week. What happened?
Well, Austin, it was again, I had already been canceled twice, and I'd already been canceled once, and this was my second cancellation. I experienced a third one once I moved 3,000 miles away to North Carolina. But again, with each and every one, you're equipped with new knowledge and new tools and better ability to move forward. But boy, I got to tell you, oh God, in the face of it, I had posted that men could not become women. Men could not become women. And again, we mustn't let anti-reality be sold to us. If they can get us to believe that, then they can get us they can get us to believe that we should give up home ownership to social housing, that we should give up earning our fair share from our work to other people who are not working. And it's a cascading series of events that you and I both know leads to nowhere good. It leads to death and starvation, mass murder, unfortunately. Always has, always will.
The part that I think stops people cold from this story, your co-creator called hours after the theater pulled the rental and told you to publish a statement distancing him from you. Dissolve the company, take your name off the script so he could still stage it. But you did it, Mary. Why?
Yeah, that's a great question, Austin. I really appreciate it. It's worth examining. In those horrific few hours after the theater called me and said, I don't agree with the fact that I'm being forced to kick you out of my theater. I don't agree with that mob, but I'm terrified of that mob, says the artistic director of Milagro Theater. I'm terrified of them. We got sideways opposite them last year, and it really hurt our ticket sales. So I can't afford you. I can't afford you. And so I'm going to throw you under the bus, but I'm real sorry. I've known this woman for 30 years, but I'm going to do it. And then they, of course, publicly declared that I was, horrible and a transphobe, and the left-wing rag, the Willamette Week, published a story, star of show is transphobic and blah, blah, blah. And I thought to myself, gee, I don't know that I've ever had a headline declaring that I was the star of anything. So that was kind of cool. But she then, of course, had to lie to the public and say that she was, completely opposed to what I had said and what I had stood for. And then my partner did the exact same thing. And, we had worked shoulder to shoulder on this really exciting project. And we were both starring in it. So we, of course, have been acting opposite each other for a few weeks before all of this fell apart. And Austin, frankly, I was blindsided, obviously. I was profoundly ashamed and embarrassed. And this is important to understand. This is what happens when good people are canceled, doxxed, exposed to the public, when names are thrown at them. Even as used as I was already to the terror tactics of the Marxists, as used to it as I was still in the moment caught off guard. And I was ashamed, and I was scared, and I was sad, and I was baffled as hell. And so when my partner called me and demanded that I publish this, sort of public treatise, I capitulated. I capitulated. What I should have done, looking back, what I should have done was I should have said, I will absolutely deconstruct the nonprofit. I will absolutely hop on, Ticketmaster or whoever it was we were using, and let those folks know, return all the money, contact all the people who were going to come, including my in-laws who were flying in from Michigan, my daughter who was flying up from San Francisco,
Wow.
other friends flying in from Montana. I mean, imagine those phone calls, because you feel like it's your fault.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't imagine. I mean, Milagro's response wasn't just to cancel the run. They announced that they would add background checks and a values clause to future rental contracts. That is a permanent ideological screen on a stage.
Yes.
What does that do to an art form over 10 or 20 years?
Well, what they had, that's a super good question. What they had done was preemptively capitulated to the struggle session, hadn't they?
Mm-hmm.
And they're on their knees and they're covering their head. We've seen a lot of that in many a public square in Mao's China. And my former partner did his own apology tour, traveling to the homes of friends of mine, explaining what a good guy he was and how none of this was his fault and blah, 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 blah. And, I got to tell you, I forgive him.
Oh,
I forgive him. I hold no rancor.
You're too kind, Mary.
No, it's okay.
You predicted back in 2021 that these woke theater companies would shutter inside 5 years. Oregon Shakespeare Festival went into crisis. Artists Repertory Theater, the company that let you go, they're gone. So you were right on the timeline. So give us the next prediction, Mary. What does American theater look like in 2030?
Well, we'll see what's going to happen with Milagro. We'll see what's going to happen with Portland Center Stage. Portland Center Stage has also really fallen to the woke. As soon as a female artistic director took over, a woke female artistic director took over. Certainly all of these donors and sponsors and endowments, are heading for the hills. The gray hairs who've been the lifeblood of the arts in America for really it's the entirety of its existence, because you have to have a little bit of discretionary income to support the arts. You have to have food, clothing, and shelter managed, and generally your kid's a little bit older, and so you're an older person going into the arts, and to scare them away is going to have foundational effects on these arts institutions. A couple of things are happening now. We know that arts across the country are shaky in every city and town. other than those arts companies who are smartly curating seasons that are entertaining and thought-provoking and inspiring and not seeking to recruit or shame or blame. So there are companies who are smartly taking the note or who have never capitulated. Those are rare, but there's a few of them there. One of them is going to mount my play in the very near future. But we also have universities on the ropes now. These universities are closing or very near to closing. Southern Oregon University, which relied on Oregon Shakes. Oh, look at that! Sorry for all that. I don't have any idea.
You'll have to play the 1812 overture behind you for that one.
The rocket's red glare.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
we're just celebrating America here. But please continue, Mary. Please continue.
I'm not a cat, Your Honor.
Yeah. I'm ready to proceed if you are.
So Southern Oregon University, Deloitte & Touche just did a recent deep dive forensic investigation into the financial health of that institution, and that applies to many, many institutions similar to it across the country. Why? Because they're not delivering the goods. Now there's also a push for these universities to have to demonstrate that when graduates leave the college, they can earn at least $30,000. It's a pretty low standard, $30,000 in their in whatever it was they became certificated in their studies in college. So what does that put on the chopping blocks? Very specifically mentioned is music and theater. Now, that means we have to get at this from both directions. It means that these people leaving college have to be able to market their tails off once they graduate so that they can get a job in the arts. Maybe it's in arts administration. It might not be being a star on stage. Maybe it's in grant funding. Maybe it's in sourcing materials, getting out there and finding the best wood and finding the best paint, back-end stuff. Certainly computer-based stuff is going to be important. Anything that's a three-dimensional craft these days is going to be facing serious challenges because it's expensive to make and it's expensive. The tickets are expensive. So when I talk about these coming from two directions, I mean these colleges are going to have to smarten up and these theaters are going to have to smarten up and say, we can't afford, P.S., they were never able to afford to turn into churches or cults, which is what they all became. Anybody who spent time, my icon agrees with me, anyone who spent time on We See You White American Theater, that website, I don't know if you've ever gone there. Oy, oy, oy. They've actually shut down the website, but the blog still exists. In its early iteration, We See You White American Theater had a clock that was counting down to when that organization was going to destroy American theater as it had been known. And they didn't have to work very hard to do it, really. Marxist influence is really all you need to kill the arts, because you kill the arts, you kill story, you take away from a culture its language, and how else is language launched other than in story, and its faith. If you take away a culture's language and faith, you can bring that culture to its knees.
Yeah, a collective of We See You White American Theater, prominent advocacy movement. They wrote a 31-page manifesto during the George Floyd stuff. Collective of Black, Indigenous people of color theater makers confronting systemic racism, exclusionary practices, and white supremacy within the United States theater industry. Well, I guess they won't be doing any productions of Showboat anytime soon. Mary, Mary, as a musical theater major and someone who loves the arts and has always been a big Shakespeare fan, if you ever start a non-woke theater company, let me know what I can do to support you. I'd love to talk to you about a little bit about your career, if I can segue for just a few minutes. And let's go into the voice recording booth, because when you auditioned for G.I. Joe, you were actually reading for a smaller part at the time. And Wally Burr heard something in your grit. He put you on Lady Jaye instead. So you said you got it because you weren't afraid to scream, "Yo, Joe." As loud
Yeah.
as you could. A child growing up in the 1980s in a little farm town, Peculiar, Missouri, everybody screamed, yo, Joe. So, but what did Lady Jaye mean to the girls watching in 1985? Because, I mean, you were very inspirational to young women.
First short-haired hero, first short-haired sort of quasi superhero.
Mm-hmm.
First one, really quite something. I mean, who knew? I wouldn't think twice about that. But and she was also non-sexualized, which was awesome. And it really made her a perfect tomboy role model. And you know, kids back then, you recall, were not, God help us all, were not sexualized the way they are today. And we were just kids. I say we were just kids. The key to being a voice actor is to be, you know, eternally childlike. I'll be 73 in September, and I'm still just a kid at heart, you know. And I'm approached by girls at the Comic-Cons who are now young women. Some of them, you know, in their late 40s already, maybe early 50s even, who grew up watching G.I. Joe, and they're so relieved. They bring me this sense of relief and this sense of love. And they say, God, finally I could see myself. I could see, you know, a rough and tumble gal out there, you know, working alongside the men. You'll notice, though, that they did not make Lady Jaye. Lady Jaye was not bossing Flint around. She was not embarrassing him or humiliating him, or nor was he doing that, of course, but we wouldn't expect him to. But in today's media, that's what you see female characters doing. They're humiliating men. They're castrating men in today's media, whether it's animation or you know, 3D pieces. Look at Supergirl. Look at you know, just about anything that you want to come up with. Look at I want to say Othello. We're still in Shakespeare.
My audience is going to love this so much. This segment so much.
Eating it up with a spoon.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
they're just going to love this. Mary, I want to ask you, because I don't have a whole lot of time left, but I want to talk to you about you know, the fact that you're literally the first AI voice most Americans ever heard. The OnStar voice is named Mary because it's you. But now you sit on the SAG-AFTRA national board, while synthetic voice cloning is kind of eating the industry from the inside. So tell us, what does the actual fight look like right now? Does a young voice actor starting today even have a career at all ahead of them?
Well, listen, I think that voice actors are born, not made. I think that voice actors come into the world getting into trouble in class constantly because they're jibber-jabbering and making peeping, squeaking noises. They can't help themselves. They're the ones that are always sent to the principal's office because of this inability to shut up. And we talked about the power of voice and how that power leads us to these larger, bigger things that we've been talking about. And so that's why I would never, ever, ever discourage somebody born with a voice, compelled to speak, to stop themselves from marching down that path and taking it on, because we're always going to need the soul of the person speaking, and AI can't provide that. And we also need people to, yes, make those funny cartoon voices and those great cartoon voices and those evergreen voices. We need that because we need to laugh and feel joy and have role models. But we need for those very same people who can't stop themselves from speaking to speak their deepest truth and to speak it unafraid and to realize when they shouldn't have capitulated, as I learn every day, and to realize that bravery counts and courage counts, and that comes along with a disinclination to shut up.
Love it, Mary. Last question for you. You've put words in actors' mouths on Twilight, on Grimm, on Leverage. You've coached people to sound like 1910 New York and Chaucerian English and Nigerian and wherever it is vampires come from. So give us the story of the hardest accent you ever had to get into a performer's mouth, and then tell us where people can find you and support the Macbeths.
Of course. Thank you so much. The hardest accent. You know, I'll tell you some hard accents. Everybody talks about the Boston accent being tough. It's a little bit hard. Mm-hmm. The Israeli accent's a little bit tough too. But I think the hardest accent, my friend, comes when you're working with an actor who's afraid and who's got shame up in them, and they're afraid to be vulnerable, and they're afraid that they're going to be exposed as someone who can't do it and who can't deliver the goods. That's the hardest accent to imbue in somebody. And I don't mind it because I get it. And I understand that the solution there is to lead with love. Just lead with love, lead with love. And sooner or later, their heart opens up, the accent goes in and takes wings. And then the next thing you know, you're seeing it on the big screen. And you're like, not bad, Patrick Stewart. Not bad.
Where can people support the Macbeths, Mary McDonald?
Oh boy, if you want to go to if you want to go to Give Send Go, I think it's Speak Up for a Silenced Artist. The link is pinned on my X profile, which is there under my name because I proudly post under my name. I think that's important if you can. And if you'd like to give, you certainly may. But the greatest gift that you can give is to continue speaking your truth, just like we do on G.I. Joe. So yo, Joe, to everybody out there, now you know, knowing is indeed half the battle. Thank you so much.
And the other half is violence. So we met because she purchased one of our shirts from forlibertyshop.com, the America 76 250 years anniversary tee. And then we've been communicating over email. And then when we heard her incredible story, we had to have her on the Wake Up America show. So thank you very much for your time, Mary Mac. And we hope that we'll talk to you again someday.
So welcome, Austin. Bye, everybody.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Let me tell you about the story that liberal algorithms locked out. Her name is Sia Weaver, and if you ask anyone in the blue sky bubble who that is, they'll look at you like a turkey looking up at the rain. But she's kind of important in New York, being Major Mamdani's chief of the Office to Protect Tenants, and since Mamdani's big issue is the rent's too damn high, yes, he stole this guy's act. It's a very key appointment in the most important city in the country, which is also our financial center. It matters that the mayor stands by, and so I assume stands with, someone who says things like, if you don't believe in the government's sacred right to seize private property, it's over. Seize private property. Home ownership is racist. Elect more communists. Private property, especially home ownership, is a weapon of white supremacy. Really? Even among the 20 million black Americans who own their own home? But these are statements made as an adult. Yes.
By the way, that clap that you just heard, that loud popping clap for what he just said, hold on, hear that. I want you to hear that again.
Ownership is a weapon of white supremacy. Really? Even among the 20 million black Americans who own their own home?
Stop right there. You hear that person clap? That person's there paid to clap. I went and saw a taping of Bill Maher's show earlier this year. Was that it? When I was in LA? So last year, can't remember. And they have these paid clappers that sit in the audience at strategic parts to like get people to clap. You heard the rest of the audience was not, but the rest of the audience were libturds. I knew that they were libturds because everybody who was sitting outside to go inside Bill Maher's show was reading a book. Now, you might think, why would that make them libturds? At least they're reading. No, they weren't reading. They just wanted to look like they were reading. They were just doing the whole act of reading. So it's just performative reading, if you will.
These are statements made as an adult. Yes. For co-eds from elite private colleges, you're only a lesbian until graduation, but the communism lasts a lifetime. Democrats seem to be having this debate whether or not Mayor Mamdani is a socialist or a democratic socialist. Let me settle it. He's a straight-up communist. How do I know this? Well, I'm reading between the lines.
Getting paid to clap.
When one of his major advisors says, elect more communists.
Yeah, no kidding. Thank you, Bill Maher. What did I say? But there are some good signs out there. Some good signs are that the left says that McCarthyism is back.
Well, you're also starring in a timely play at the New York City Center called Are You Now or Have You Ever Been, which is about the famous Hollywood blacklist era of the 40s.
Yeah.
And you say that it really hits home for you. Tell us about that.
Well, it does because, you know, I've been in the business a long time. I started as a very young lady, 13 years old, my first movie. So I actually worked with people who were blacklisted. You know, I worked with Burgess Meredith, blacklisted for years. Lee Grant played my mother in a movie. So it really did hit home for me. And it's a period of time that I find very interesting because, again, it's something that can happen now.
Well, it is
and in
happening.
fact, it's something that does happen now.
They're yelling communist as if they never heard the history of what happened then.
Yeah.
Good, good. Yes, we are McCarthy maxing and we are Goldwater maxing. I am building a libertarian nationalist movement within the Republican Party. The goal is to restore the legacy of Barry Goldwater. It's time to leave the Libertarian Party behind. It's time to leave the silly lulbertarian things behind. It's time to adopt some new ideas so that we can fight the old ideas of communism. If you guys want to get in on this fight, make sure you visit forlibertynetwork.com. Sign up, join the community page, and we're going to start moving people away from Discord so that we can have these conversations more at forlibertynetwork.com. You can always find any of our live shows whenever we're live at forlibertynetwork.com. So make sure that you guys head over there before the end of the day. Check out the Goldwater Revival. Read the article about the new Goldwater movement that we're building in the Republican Party. Sign up today. Thank you, Quest Fanning. Ever seen On the Waterfront? Great film. I could have been a contender. Hell yes. Matt Unruh, good to see you, bud. Read that article about the Goldwater Revival. Maybe that'll get you on the train. We appreciate all that you guys do for us. People like Quest Fanning and Maria Edenbow and Matt Unruh, Itchy McGroin, Byron Norris especially, Red Pill Prof, all of our friends. Thank you so much for all you do for us to help us to grow the Goldwater movement in the Republican Party. And we'll see you guys right back again here tomorrow on the Wake Up America show and the For Liberty Network. El Ratio Hornblower. Tis the year of our Lord, 1801. President Trump Jefferson casts his gaze o'er the sovereign Potomac and beholds a most wretched spectacle upon the waters. From the cursed shores of Tripoli and the welfare coffers of distant Minnesota comes the brazen Captain Ilhan Omar, commanding her fleet of Barbary pirates. She demands her ransom, billions in reparations. Yet one instrument of fortitude suffices, a steaming chalice of Jeffersonian Java, bold and unapologetic from For Liberty shop. No more tribute to rogues, he thunders, and dispatches the Navy and Marines to smash Omar's fleet asunder. Trump Jefferson stands triumphant as Omar's plunder meets the end it deserved back in Minnesota. Jeffersonian Java, the coffee that gives true Americans the courage to refuse tribute and rebuke fraud. Procure yours at forlibertyshop.com and make America caffeinated again.